Today in the program, clothing for every day with Ukrainian handmade embroidery. Why dresses from Ivano-Frankivsk ended up being worn by an African-American model in downtown New York. And how to build a successful internet business by investing only $10 into advertising. All this in the new issue of Master of Crafts. In anticipation of a vice-versa regime between Ukraine and the European Union, pessimistic economists keep predicting that more people, especially young ones, will leave the country to work abroad due to social and financial hardships in their home country. Judging by public opinion polls, not everyone who dreams about opening their own business in their homeland firmly decides to do so. Expert estimates, of course, deserve attention, but the real picture of life in Ukraine is much more complicated and more interesting. An economist will tell you that in times of crisis, many new opportunities open up, in particular for local producers. But only if you can find such a business model that will bring income and at the same time open Ukraine for the whole world. A regular office building in the center of Kyiv. Tourists will not be told that Ukrainian handmade embroidered works, which have crossed the Atlantic Ocean more than once, are made right in this building. This is the headquarters of the internet store Ethno Dom. The founder of this successful company has already grown accustomed to the fact that unfamiliar people often take him for a student or a mid-level manager. Of his almost 27 years of age, Andriy Chiruha dedicated 8 of them to his favorite pastime, all because once he wanted to find work under the table to supplement his stipend. I was a sophomore and my specialty was cultural studies. But at the same time I was interested in business, internet projects and website development. It's easy to imagine a student from the capital who comes up with business ideas in the big city. But Chiruha was studying in the National University of Ostrog Academy, in the small town of Ostrog in Rivne region. This is one of the oldest universities in Eastern Europe. The first printed books of the famous Ivan Fedorov, including the Ostrog Bible, appear there. Hetman Petro Sahaidachny was a graduate of the academy in the 17th century, but the place was never known to produce outstanding entrepreneurs. Well, at least until the 21st century. In 2009, 18-year-old Andriy Chiruha had an interesting idea – to create an online store for embroidered works. There were online clothing stores, but buyers were still very cautious and they were afraid to buy on the internet. They asked themselves, how can I order clothes without trying it on? As for embroidered shirts, it seemed that there were no competitors whatsoever. I had friends in Ivano-Frankivsk region, and I knew that it was in this region that embroideries cost much less than in central Ukraine or in other regions. Further in the program, how to overtake Wikipedia for mere 80 hryvnias and nearly go bankrupt because of one buyer. Andriy set up the site of his online store with his friend. In fact, the site became an intermediary between the masters from the Ivano-Frankivsk region and Ukrainian buyers. Despite the fact that clothing with traditional embroidery has been known for many hundreds of years, in 2009 it turned out to be specific and even somehow exotic. After the Orange Revolution in 2004, the fashion for ethnic motifs had gone from low to not, and before the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, there were 5 more years to go. Ironically, that was the state of affairs which allowed Andriy's online store to become the leader in this virtually untapped niche. We started selling practically in the very first weeks of operation. An advertisement was an easy thing back then. We bought links and started SEO promotion. We invested only 80 hryvnias into that, and from the first days, our request for a shirt with an embroidery outstripped Wikipedia. We were in the top positions. 80 hryvnias in 2009 was just $10. The demand was increasing dramatically, and Andriy had to sell more and more embroidered shirts. Some workers from Ivano-Frankivsk region who were doing embroidery started to spread word about their work. So the production capacity of the online store, which did not even have a permanent office, multiplied. In 2012, Andriy realized that for the development of business it is time for him to move to Kyiv, because it was easier to deliver the goods all over Ukraine from the capital city. My parents thought it was just a joke and a game for me, but I might actually learn something from that. When I moved to Kyiv, they told me to find a job, and you'll have stability and somebody will always back you in case of emergency. My sister has always told me to become a programmer, because it would guarantee a decent salary for me. But I knew that my business was interesting, it gave me pleasure, and I saw its prospects as money maker. The prospects were bright. Sales were growing, and Andriy, together with designer Ilya Kazanchuk, managed to open their own small shop to manufacture embroidered clothing. It would seem that the business had finally become successful, so it had never occurred to Andriy that only one order from an unknown firm would put his business on the verge of bankruptcy. We billed them. They actually took all the ready goods that we had and then they just disappeared. When we started to investigate the situation, it turned out that the details of the bank account were false, and that in fact such company didn't exist at all. In the end, we were left high and dry. The swindlers were never found after all. What was the option? Closing the business or starting everything from scratch? Andrei decided that he was not ready to become a programmer, and he persuaded his sister to give him a loan to buy a new batch of goods. After all, a 22-year-old entrepreneur would not be entrusted with such a large amount of money. This money allowed Andrei to reopen the store, and in a few months get sales back to their initial figures. Further in the program, where does Andrei Chiruha get his ideas for new designs? And how did an Afro-American from New York become a true yellow and blue Ukrainian? In 2014, after the Revolution of Dignity, there was an actual boom for shirts decorated with embroidery. The designer started making up new expensive models, which were not affordable by some, but Chiruha didn't waver from his long-standing policy. We did not give up. We continued to develop our style more modern-like for every day. This is not the kind of clothing that is meant for fancy parties, at prices starting from 300 euros. Today we can say our things to be worn by TV presenters, and we see people on the streets, in office centers, and even abroad wearing our embroidered clothing. I think we are developing in the right direction, and we did not copy somebody's design. Andrei recalls that before the Russian aggression against Ukraine, he stores in dozens of Ukrainian embroidered works to Russia every month. Where you lose, you will find. Andrei began to receive orders from European countries, Germany, France, Great Britain, as well as from representatives of the Ukrainian diaspora from Canada and the United States. By that time, embroidered goods already proved to be in such high demand on Western trading internet sites. And in Kyiv, they managed to open a full-fledged store, and all this without mass production of clothing. The main manufacturing facilities of the online store, as it was at the very beginning, are in Ivano-Frankivsk now and in the Carpattia region. Andrei said that he tries to get acquainted with all the workers that do the embroidery, but it's not always that easy or possible. Now we have 20 to 25 people who do the embroidery for us. In fact, we have much more manpower than that. So we keep in touch with one of the workers, but she might be doing the work with her mother or sister. Traditional Ukrainian patterns, only natural materials and handmade pieces. In the Middle Ages, shirts with an embroidered pattern were everyday clothing for Ukrainians, and hundreds of years later they were associated with the national movement. Clothing with embroidery had repeatedly over many years fallen under the ban of the authorities of Poland, the Russian Empire, and later in the Soviet Union. In this respect, the beginning of the 21st century crosses roads with the beginning of the 20th century, when the poet Ivan Franko put on a shirt with embroidery under his jacket, out of principle. Today, Andrei Chiruha has a lot of really authentic material that he can use to emulate and adapt. We get our designs from books, the internet. Sometimes people give us some authentic pieces, which belong to their great-grandmothers. They say that we can make some use of it and make something respectable out of it. These patterns symbolize something special and we use them. Sometimes we make them more contemporary. For their in-house manufacturer in Kyiv, Chiruha has only 3 production departments and a few employees. The exclusivity here is that each model is handmade. First of all, our designer develops the patterns and then draws the sketches. After that, a designer passes them to the design engineer, who transfers the models to templates on the paper. This is then cut out. With the help of those templates, we cut out the fabric and then we can see the pieces. When the templates are made, we pass the cloth to the sewing department, where everything is embroidered. Then back to the template department. Here they are being cut out. The right forms are made, which seam stress is used to make the final product. After the boom in embroidery, Andrei decided that one cannot count only on clothing. When the market is oversaturated, sales can fall at any time. Therefore, he began to produce shoes and even bed linens under his own brand. So far, these products are not so popular, but the sales results are encouraging. And over the years, embroidered wear has become more popular and fashionable. This fact played a bad joke on Ethno Dom. In 2016, Chiruha came up with an idea of sales promotion for social networks, which presupposed a guaranteed embroidered work as a gift. He could not even have imagined how all this could end.
лайки. Хто набере 100-200 лайків за репост, той обов'язково отримує вишиванку. Буквально за 3 дні.
A person who gets 100 to 200 likes for a repost will get an embroidered shirt. Literally in 3 days we had thousands of participants.
Ми не знали, що від цього буде, але розуміли, що за сотні, кількість переможців йде за сотні.
We realized that we had several hundreds of winners. There were two options. Either distribute all the goods as gifts and remain with nothing, or cancel everything and go bankrupt in terms of customer trust.
Просто про нас напишуть як про брехунів, які обманують людей.
A good businessman knows that the trust of customers is more important than any money. So Andrei decided to fulfill his promises after all. Although some winners were asked to wait a month or two for their gift, there were no further problems. Andrei said that people are still receiving their gifts, and because of the sales promotion, the team had to work a lot of overtime. Even now it seems worth it to him, and the young entrepreneur continues to invent unusual, in fact even exotic ways of promotion in social networks. At the end of 2016, the internet was struck by an unusual photo shoot with an American fashion model named Roxy Monroe. The contrast was great. The Afro-American girl was posing in the middle of New York wearing Ukrainian embroidery by Ethno Dom. Andrei Chiruha is trying to show the whole world that there is no such place on earth where our embroideries would be inappropriate, and there is no fashion model that they would not fit. Andrei Chiruha is sure ethnical motifs of any country can be a world fashion trend if one puts enough efforts into it.
Нас продають в Європі.
Our shirts with embroideries are sold in Europe, the US, Canada and also Australia. It is possible to buy our pieces in different showrooms and shops with their own assortment, but they put our pieces there as well. Our manufacturing facilities allow for operating on international markets. That's why we constantly need new partners.
Дозволяють поширювати себе і на закордонному ринку, тому ми шукаємо постійно нових партнерів.
Andrei Chiruha wants to make his store a full-fledged global brand from Ukraine, and for now he is not going to look for a steady job. He will not exchange the ups and downs of his own business for anything, and he will go abroad to promote exclusively his embroidered works.